start with a little brief introductory warm-up meditation mantras, and then we typically have a talking point and 2 meditations mixed in there. It's kind of the method to the madness of this event. But then we also pass around a talking stick or feather or whatever to open it up if any of you throughout the night will have multiple opportunities to share if you like, or that sharing can be questions, it can be ideas, it can be things you're going through. You can feel it's related or not, it's all right. But first, just take a deep breath in. If you want, put a hand on the belly, just feel in the belly. Nice and up. The reason you're doing the belly first, and then because you're trying to first ground in to this center through the belly, ground into this moment. And the key in this breath, the most important thing is natural rhythm. Cycles of life. So however long you breathe in is however long you breathe out. When you breathe in to the belly, you're relaxing. When you're breathing out, you're gaining focus. So if you do 3 in, do 3 out. If you like, you can do any holds at the top or the bottom of your breath, but if you do it at the same count. Checking in with your energy systems. Noticing where you're stuck. Noticing where you're distracted. Noticing where you're present. Noticing where and what and how or whatever comes up. And then just spend a moment looking within, find a focus point anywhere within inside of you. Try to just focus there. Whenever you lose your distraction, come back to that focus point. If you focus there with all of your intention and attention, eventually you'll notice your energy center is getting more subtle, and you might notice some expansion, but do not follow the expansions, please. Try not to listen to your body. So no rubbing the eyes, no moving. Try to get past it. It demonstrates to your body that your mind is in charge, not the other way around. Just 30 more seconds. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Welcome this evening. Thank you everyone for joining. We got to jump into some very specific stuff tonight. And so I'm going to try to go around. A lot of us here too, so don't probably not pass around the talking stick as much tonight. But if there's ever anything you want to share or question about, just raise your hand. But if we can, I would just pass it around. Just say your name to introduce to the circle. If there's a word that comes to mind, that one word that describes your feeling, say that word to bring that intent into the circle or that healing needed.
Richard Gates.
So it's a good practice in the circle anyway. As people are going around and sharing, to try not to think about what you're going to say. And then just have faith or trust that something will come out. Or it won't, and be all right with either kind of thing. So the reason I'm jumping right in tonight, because kind of going down a rabbit hole. The second meditation is just going to be a guided meditation. But the first one, let's say this. On Monday is the full moon of Wesak. In many circles, in different backgrounds and cultures, it's one of the, if not the most important full moon of the year, because it begins a new cycle. And so I'm being asked to share things about that, what's needed and what's the purpose of that and how it's tying into greater things happening in humanity. And the only way that I can do that is by diving into a little bit deeper of subjects and also giving a little bit of personal background, neither of which I care to do much of. The deeper subjects, because this stuff isn't simplified enough, it's too vast, so it can be confusing, but try to bear with it. The idea is, like, for this center, I've asked when we got started here whether this could be a center where we have any medicine ceremonies, and was told no. And the reason that I understand it to be now is because those ceremonies and other things are meant to really help people dealing with healing and working through their astral body. The astral body really is the battleground of the form state. You see, most people relate to their physical body, but their physical body is fed through their astral body. Their emotions, it's where they get their lessons and things like that. The personal lessons. And so, for instance, that's really important when people, because wherever you find yourself is where you find yourself. But the idea is, if you find yourself still within your astral body, it could be lower or higher. There's a lot of people who can really feel that they're really spiritually out there, but what they don't realize is they're in the illusion of the astral body. They're getting the reflections of the messages from higher grounds, not actually attaining the higher grounds. And so in those higher reflections, there can be a lot of confusing messages that come in for people working through those things. And so in the astral realm, it's really important to help people there to work through their things, to find peace. The idea in the astral realm, as you're moving up through to the spiritual realms, is the spirit of peace helps steady the water so you can have clarity. And as you have clarity, what's happening is that astral emotional realm is actually the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. So what's happening is, without knowing it, you're building a bridge. And as you start reaching up to the pinnacle of the astral consciousness, the idea is to start having a choice of how do you want to start working with the powers, mainly as a loving acceptance or as a way to control others. You can go to darkness, and in that can really help people. You see, like, a lot of times in your life, you've probably had moments where you've really struggled or encountered some pain, and as you look back on now, those were some of the times that really helped you. Do you see? The darkness isn't necessarily bad. It's dependent on the intent, but it is important. Just like you can also then step the other way. But most people aren't stepping into the mental body yet out of protection, because they could misuse those powers. Do you see? And they can harm others. Hopefully unintentionally, but nonetheless cause themselves a lot of karma. Do you see? And so I'll share with you that my earliest spiritual memory, other than maybe some different gifts, was just the message that if you tell them what is shown, we will go away. No other messaging, Not even saying this is what's going to be shown or any of that kind of crap. Not any, this is, we're talking about this over here, this over here. You got to figure it out all out on your own. Do you see? But that was the first message, because that's how important it is. What they're looking for is people that have purity of intent or purpose and humility of spirit. Stuff is revealed in direct proportion to the humility of your spirit, because they want to make sure that these things are being safeguarded and helped for humanity to awaken. Do you see? Because what happens is, as we gain in consciousness, more things are revealed, right? But a lot of those things are already being revealed, but we don't yet have the alignment and the attunement to see those things. So there's people on the forefront to start really tapping into those things, to start bringing it through for the masses. And likely, if you are here tonight, you are one of those people that could potentially be there for the forefront of the masses, who has a choice to make whether this life is going to be more about you and your lessons or you and your giveaway. Do you see? It's not to say that any person, just because they're working up to their mental body, which is the reflection of the spirit world as the co-creator, just because you're going there, doesn't mean that you don't still have flaws. Doesn't mean that you don't still have an ego. But the idea is, when it counts, you know how to put that in the back burner. Do you see what I'm saying? And so there's a big one that's starting to go into, that I've seen out there on YouTube a lot lately. I mentioned at the last circle, a guy named Chris Bledsoe. I'll just give you his background, but there's tons of stories like this out there. And just like there's probably 1 million of me out there, there's 1 million of each one of us. So you can step up and do your purpose or not, it's still going to be coming. But anyway, he had an encounter witnessed by many people through a few different things with some different light beings that kind of changed his world. So much so, and started bringing in the divine feminine, that there's a lot of people high ups around many different government agencies that go to him for getting certain messages from certain beings, right? And so one of the messages that he got, that other people have gotten as well, which is loosely around when the fire rises above the Sphinx in the east, certain things are going to be revealed. And he had no idea what that meant until he talked to other people that were more tied into, maybe, I don't know, I'm using this word lightly, Egyptian cryptology and stuff like that. And they said actually what that's referring to is the star Regulus, the red star in the sky, and when that aligns. And anyway, that is due to align Easter 2026. Okay? And also, that's my personal message that I've gotten for 20 years, is basically there's meetings that occur around it's hard to process this energy. There is a meeting of spiritual hierarchy that occurs at this full moon coming up. And then certain revealments that occur. I'm not saying something like apocalypse or any of that kind of crap, but what I'm saying is there's opportunity for spiritual understandings. We are moving out of the last Atlantean age into this new age, the Aquarian age, where we have the opportunity to be co-creators. That co-creation is not individual. It is stepping into group consciousness. Do you see? It is something bigger than any one of us. And so in the coming days, and why why I have to say this stuff quickly now is because I'm way behind the 8 ball, and this stuff has to be released. Do you see what I'm saying? So that way you have the opportunities to learn and grow through this and stuff like that. And eventually this center will probably somehow break off into groups that come here for healings and for helping them get through their spiritual weeks or getting some clarity and things like that. And then others who are being trusted with greater amounts of information who can then start guiding people, I guess you could say. It's the way that I would understand it. And so in order to do that, the two keynotes are alignment and attunement. Think of like a piano. First, you got to build the piano and get all the keys in order. I'm not musically inclined, so pardon the analogy. And then you play, right? You first have to do the internal mechanisms, and then you help to sound the notes. Make sense? So it's the same thing as we've been talking about. You'll see how some of this messaging is connecting in from past healing circles. We talk about finding your values, the things that you value most in this world. Choose a few of them and start living them. Do you see? The internal things that matter most to you, start living your life by that vibration rather than all the other noise that distracts you from aligning to your purpose. Do you see? As you align to your values and start living your values, not just preaching your values or thinking about your values or whatever, living your values, what happens is you become more authentic. Values equal worth. You get more worth. That worth translates into the value of who you are. Do you see? Do you see how it works? That value, that spreading that, does what the purpose of knowledge in the astral realm is. It builds your confidence. See, you are not the lessons. You are not the forms. What you are is the thing stepping out of that. And that's what alignment is showing you. It is building your confidence. Confidence is not just an ability to speak. Confidence is the strength of your vibration. Does that make sense? Sorry, these are a lot of different things jumping in, but what I'm trying to say is that what happens is you align first to your form so that you can release the form and start getting to your true being, your spiritual being, and then you attune. Attune, there's always a dance between the internal focus and the external focus. Do you see? You align, stuff comes in, and you attune. Or you respond. You notice what's going on with people. You notice what might be the calling or the need, and you respond. But as you're stepping into that, you have to decide how to respond. And the easiest, most concise way to respond is basically a loving acceptance. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to impress them. You're not trying to change the world. You're not trying to make everybody else think like you, be like you, act like you. You're trying to help them discover their potential. Help them first discover who they are, and then they can start to see into their potential. But whether they grow is totally up to their own free will. Make sense? So, what happens at this this full moon basically is a way to start opening up and attuning to spiritual messaging coming through from higher realms. Basically, during the full moon of May, what occurs is, in esoteric terms, the spiritual Shambhala is coming through to the hierarchy, and so there's a direct connection. And so it's an opportunity to directly connect, right? And it's also an opportunity for things to be transmitted out. And so the greater the numbers of people, the higher the calling, the easier it is for those messagings to come in. Maybe not for everyone to see. I would guess that there will be a lot of revealments going on, going into 2026, but also ways for it to come through. Remember, if it ever comes through and it's a message that's impacting your free will, then you already know you're dealing with the astral realm. If it ever comes through and says, you're really special and you got to do crap or whatever, it's coming through the astral realm. Because no higher being is going to impact or try to interfere with your free will. That's not loving acceptance. So they're the role models of it. Do you see? That's the beauty of it. And so what I'm going to do in this first meditation is first I'm going to read through kind of a way that they might say this stuff, and then open up, see if there's any questions, and then we'll drop back in for the second part. The second part's going to be more direct messaging. And then if there's any time at the end of tonight, we'll give specifics for if you want to participate in these coming up things, because it starts on Saturday. And it's something that you can continue on through every full moon for the remainder of the year until we hit 2026 at this point. You don't have to. You can play with it. You can see how it goes. And also I can email it to you if you want to see the specific layout of instructions for it. I think that's it. Any questions before we drop in? Everyone ready? Sorry for the intensity. Sit back, relax. You don't have to agree or follow any of the stuff that's coming through. It's all right. You can just let the energies flow, however you want to let the energies flow. I flew through that quickly. That was awesome. This is the mix of many esoteric writings I've pulled from different places and my own stuff. I take no ownership. Drop into your meditative state, giving yourself permission to be fully present, this time and space. We have spent many thousands of years polarizing on the astral and emotional plane. This is the plane of our lessons and personal growth as we develop self-awareness. This astral plane is the middle ground that stands between our physical plane and that of spirit. What happens over time upon this plane is that we find peace within our hearts. With that, we become less and less swayed by high or low emotional desires. Instead, in the spirit of peace, clarity of the soul is achieved, and we find unconditional love and acceptance in our hearts. This act of sharing loving acceptance in our relations with others acts as a bridge between the spirit world and its reflection in the lower physical world. The choice of loving acceptance is an attunement to what have many in the past referred to as the second coming of the Christ, the avatar, or the spirit of peace. Essentially, this answer to our calling ushers in the new and needed fresh cycle of civilization and culture. For this reason, humanity is currently swept into a vortex of conflict, and the issues depend upon each of us to maintain the principles of clear thinking, wise speech, and selfless intent as we move towards a unified world consciousness. Realize while the doorway is opening, we are the ones that are collectively in human consciousness building the key or calling to open this door. A great and vital thought form is in process of construction upon our planet and with our planetary aura. It is being built by the power of sound, by the magnetic pull of invocation, leading to eventual evocation, and by the force of desire substance, animated by the power of thought. The steady intention of loving service becomes a mediating factor, constructed by humanity, but animated by the will to good of some great and spiritual entity. When a thought form has been constructed of sufficient potency and has been built over a long period of time by the people of the world, a further and final stage becomes ever possible. This thought form is now safely anchored in the physical plane, as it is of vast proportions upon the astral emotional plane, but it lacks vitality and power upon the mental plane. In other words, it is potent physically and emotionally through the work of the lovers of humanity, the well-meaning efforts of emotionally oriented people, and the agonized longings of the masses, who hate war, desire quiet, and demand peace and good living conditions. Yet a gap remains on the mental plane of co-creation, as those spiritually developed in our communities lack clarity and a will to work in unity. They are evading issues or thinking separatively or nationally or fanatically. They are not convinced of the potency of the invocation or of prayer. They are failing to realize that it is possible to work ardently for those conditions which will lead to peace. They fail to love all men without exception, and their longing to see their own loyalties emerge triumphant. They work doubtedly, hoping for the best but believing in the worst. They use the method of prayer and of invocation because such methods seem to have been successful in the past and because they are told that faith can move mountains. But they fail inwardly quite hopelessly and uninspired and are not at all sure what faith is intrinsically. They realize that a united front and a spirit of joyous certainty are psychological assets of well-nigh invincible potency, but they feel unable to arouse themselves the slightest enthusiasm. It's this negative and lukewarm attitude, this mental uncertainty, and this failure to link up to the spirit and physical worlds in a positive relationship, which is holding back the forces of light and the actual presence of the spirit of peace, and thus negating a possible divine intervention. Realize this is a test of group work and not individual personalities, interest, or individual circumstances. The time has come to make a choice as to what you believe. Either the spiritual hierarchy exists with all of its potencies of love, wisdom, and skill in action, or for ages humanity has suffered from hallucinations. Either Christ and his group of masters, initiates, and disciples are facts in the natural processes of evolution, historically proven and known through their spiritual activity down the ages, or men have become victims during the ages of a gigantic fraud. Either the consistency of the evolving presentation of spiritual effort of the hierarchy is a witness to a great reality of mankind that has developed a mentality which is an instrument for the fabrication of non-existent facts, or this is an entire paradoxical field with no interference. Either spiritual worlds and the three worlds of human endeavor can be related, or there is nothing to past beliefs, to ancient stories of manifesting divinity, and to the constantly recurring periods of divine intervention. I would here face you with these alternatives and would ask you to consider your own position in these matters. Know now, this is possible through your own choice and will. In your own life of meditation and of actuated discipline, in your speech with others, and in general tone of your intercourse with your environment, you can eliminate the negative and more selfish reactions, and for the sake of human welfare, temporarily at least, live at your highest point of aspirations. You are called to a period of clear thinking. We seek not to mold your political approach to life, but do seek to aid you to see humanity and its welfare, not only in terms of your own nation or your own political group, but in terms of the whole. As we, the teachers on the inner side, are forced to see it. I seek to see you free yourselves from the condition where you are swayed by propaganda of a political, national, or religious kind, and deciding for yourself where you, as a soul, must stand in this world crisis, and on which side you will place the emphasis of any influence you wish to wield. I would have you note where your highest ideals will lead you, and where the springs of your life's decisions and attitudes are truly pure and unadulterated. I seek to draw your attention away from the many minor issues, the many clamoring voices, and from the widespread concentration upon the unworthy past and the undesirable aspects of all nations, without exception, and help you to see with clarity the major dualism which underlies the present world conflict. This dualism is a might against a right, materialism against higher values, freedom against imprisonment, cruelty against fair dealing, liberty and safety against fear and aggression. Then, having balanced these pairs of opposites within your consciousness, decide where your loyalty, your interest, and your ability to serve will be placed. And then go forward to further the ends of the one and the other of the two groups, and no matter what the cost, but knowing where you stand and why you stand there. Realize you hold the power. Exercise your choice and then live it. I'm going to just drop us into the second part of the meditation. This is the messaging. So if you have decided to move forward, this is the messaging for you. In this hour of crisis, anxiety, and suspense, there are certain things which you would do well to remember, and certain things which you should endeavor to do. The first thing, therefore, of which I would like to remind you is that the hierarchy stands behind all that is going on today. The same group of spiritual forces and the same elder brothers and masters are to be found as in all the past, guiding humanity along the path of life and bringing us safely and satisfactorily to our present point of development. The Buddha, whose festival we are currently celebrating, and the Christ, who expresses to us the unchanging love of God, are still with us. And the hierarchy stands as a defensive wall of strength behind us and possible disaster. The center of spiritual life is like the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. The second thing I would have all of you remember is that mankind has marched steadily forward from a state of blind ignorance and unawareness to one of intelligent preoccupation with life and a growing sense of responsibility. The sense of responsibility which is awakened in all of you is on its present large scale relatively new, and is one of the factors definitely increasing the distress and pain you are all feeling. You yourselves, where as a race have we failed, and what we can, you ask yourself as a race, where have we failed and what can we do to rectify our mistakes? In spite of everything, however, men have gone from one stage to another stage of intelligent and spiritual unfoldment, and no matter what the outer happenings have been or may be, the race has made real progress. There has been no turning back, and there will be none. Mankind has weathered many storms and survived many difficulties. Men have emerged from periods of crisis better and stronger, purified so as by the fire, and definitely nearer the goal. I will remind you also of the integrity and solidarity of the human family. We are one people, one in our relationships and capacities and desires, our origin and our goal. It is this essential and recognizable integrity which is emerging at this time powerfully in the human consciousness. You are apt to think that this may not be so, that your position in believing this is somewhat unique and that you stand somewhere alone. But this is your error, and this is not true to the facts of the case. In every land and among differing peoples, the same desire exists for understanding, for the establishment of right and peaceful relations, and for the expression of that goodwill, which is one of the deepest human characteristics and our divine inheritance. There are things which, it seems to me, are important at this time and which all of us would do well to remember. Will you try to do so? No matter what may take place in the world, whether war, peace, strife and aggression, or understanding, conciliation, and conference, we face a difficult period of adjustment. And for this, we must be prepared. The next few years are critical. And this we have often been told. Much will depend upon what you and the men of goodwill and disciples think and what they do. I would like to remind you of another most encouraging thing, and that is that the power wielded by those who are seeking to live as souls and in touch with the soul and the world of spiritual realities is out of all proportion to the registered sense of power and usefulness. You are, as you endeavor to wield spiritual force constructively and selflessly, far more potent than you realize. If you add to this realization the recognition that you are not alone in this, but that people with a vision similar to yours and with the same ideals and spiritual aspiration are to be found in every country without exception of any kind, in every religion, every group, and every organization, then indeed you can go forward with courage and with hopeful faith. If this is a statement of fact, and I believe it to be so, then let us go forward in the unison and with our brothers everywhere, conscious of opportunity, of strength, of responsibility, and of joy of service. As regards some of the things which you can do, I would suggest the following. Refuse to allow yourself to be swept by any fear psychosis or to be stampeded into any attitude through which anxiety and unrest and distress in the world can overwhelm you. Strive to stand in spiritual being. Each morning in your meditation, seek to take that attitude with a new and fresh definitiveness and to hold it during the hours of service which lie ahead each day. This will not be an easy thing to do, but it can be done if you can get quiet enough for 5 minutes each morning, completely and interiorly quiet. And if you fill your day with this vital occupation and true service, guarding with care all thought and speech. Between now and the Waisak Festival next Monday, let each of you gain control of the speech which has often been your goal but seldom your achievement. And remember that the most powerful factor in the control of speech is a loving heart. Wild and fearful talk, hateful gossip, cruel innuendo, suspicion, ascribing of wrong and wicked motives to persons and peoples, and the divergences of attitudes which have separated the many different nations in the world are rampant today and have brought this world into this present distressing situation. It is so easy to drift into the same habits of speech and thought which we find ourselves around us and discover ourselves participating in an attack in the spirit of hate. Guard yourselves strenuously against this and say nothing which could inflame hate and suspicion in connection with any race, any person, any group, any leaders, or any nations. You will have to guard yourself with care so that even in defense of that which you may personally and nationally approve, you do not find yourself full of hate and breaking the law of love, the only law which can truly save the world. Perhaps the key to your success along this line will be the silence of a loving heart. It will be good also to cultivate the joy that brings strength. This is not the time for gloom, despair, or depression. If you give way to these, you become negative and destructive focal points in your environment. if you truly believe that the spiritual life is fundamental in the world today, if you do believe that divinity guides the world, if you truly grasp the fact that all men are your brothers, and that we are all the children of one Father, if you are convinced that the heart of humanity is sound, are these not adequately potent ideas to hold us joyously steady in the midst of a changing world? As you step into these meditations, will you therefore carry with you the following ideas? There are 4. First, the hierarchy of spiritual forces stand in spiritual being. Second, that we too can stand steadily in spiritual being. Third, that the silence of a loving heart should be your keynote for the coming year. Fourth, that the strength to stand is the result of a joyous attitude and a true orientation to the soul. Take a moment. To not reflect back on the words, but to look forward into the future. Notice the difference. And then as you're ready, you can bring yourselves back fully physically conscious to the circle. It's kind of a meditation, but quite different than anything that we've ever gone into before. We hit things from a lot of angles. I'll point out a couple things and then I'll open up to you guys. But that is basically the end of that first grouping, preparing us for what is coming, which is the opening of the doorways. I'll give one more insight. Okay, I'll say it. Screw it. So the only instruction I've been given in the past is to create 3 different things, not knowing what any of those things are. One was to create soul templates. Some of you have gotten the first renditions of the soul templates done. The second is light healing, and the third is an updated uniform system of Raja Yoga. The Raja Yoga thing will be coming for people here in the future that are stepping into the mental body. Light healing is basically this, to the furthest of my understanding. Most people, as they're trying to heal, take a long time to heal because they're applying the past ways of healing. The furthest way back of healing is healing through the physical consciousness, and so things like acupuncture and things like that are using willful intent to manifest personally how to create a healing for someone. And typically those healings don't stick. They're very effective, but only for short times. You have to keep coming back to it to readjust. Mostly because a lot of the healings, remember, are coming through the astral body, and they're part tied to essence. The physical body is the effect, not the cause, right? I'm not saying any of those things are bad. I'm saying that just like we're built of a physical mineral consciousness and a plant and animal consciousness bringing into our human consciousness, those things are building into others. The next stage of healing would be an astral consciousness. So it's tied to a lot of things people are doing now, which is certain types of yogas, breath work, chakra healings, Reiki, dark nights of going on shamanic journeys, going into past lives, all those kinds of things. Again, all those things help people. They're helping for the astral consciousness. But what's happening is you're turning back and identifying and trying to find the roots of those things. So you think you have to go all the way back. I have to find the pinpoint of when this started and do this whole psychological thing. I have to fully feel it. Again, all those things can work and they're very effective, but for a lot of people that can be very slow. I have to go to 10 years of therapy or whatever, right? And it can be overstimulating, and that's because the astral body is connected to the form side of life. It's part of the illusion. And so all of those things are form healings. Do you see? You're attaching to the forms. But really what's happening through those things, if you let go of what you think has to happen in time and space, is you're healing yourself, right? You're just handing that confidence and support to the other healer if it's being done properly through that healer. They're not the healer, they're the vessel, right? Light healing is basically, instead of looking into the past and trying to reflect on it rather than absorb it. In other words, what you're doing is the sun is shining and you're turning and looking at the shadow to get the healing. Light healing, and that's in the past, all the accumulations. Light healing is turning to the light into the future, the true essence of who you are, to see what is needed. Finding it from within instead of from without. That's all. Okay? Anyway, so some of that pertains to what I heard them say, or me say, and the only other thing is, remember that the keynote to moving the astral body, getting closer to the mental, is finding that spirit of peace we talked about. And then eventually at the high note, then turning around the other way, bringing love into your physical realities. So you can, instead of just attuning, instead of just aligning, you're also attuning. Remember, inward and outward. You're sharing it with others. As you step into the mental body, the keynote is joy. So they speak a lot of joy and strength. And that's because what you're doing is you're starting to step into your true self, or at least a reflection of your true self, which is your soul. Anyway, it's a lot of different information. It's just a viewpoint. Can't say what's accurate or not. And that's it. That was a lot of stuff, so I apologize, but I need to get through it for the Wessex moon. Anyone have any insights, questions, ideas? I'm sure some of you have gotten much deeper into some of those things as well from different aspects. Since I flew through it so quickly, I'm going to pass this around just in case it triggers something in you. If there's anything that you want to share, feel free. If not, just keep passing it. We'll try to keep the shares to a minute or under, though, just because of the vast number of people here. Thank you. My opinion is that they are the same thing. So all that darkness is just denser forms of the light that's misunderstood. So the idea is to bring understanding to it, and the way you bring understanding to it is to bring it a loving light. You make it lighter. You don't take yourself so seriously. And you see, like for instance, if I was going to go in to heal my depression, I would not see that depression as me. I would see that depression as an infant child that needs love. Do you see what I'm saying? Like literally. You have to literally see it that way. And then it gets revealed, and then it'll teach you, and then you're smiling and giggling with it and saying thank you, and seeing the purpose behind the depression and how important it was and why you called it into this lifetime, why it was so important. Because remember, you called it. Every single life, as we check into these little personalities, we choose this whole makeup of us, right? And we also choose what are we going to magnetically call forward, right? And so it's all, to me, God's gift. Thanks. Okay, so I'll add two things to it. One, the way that I would understand it, in incarnation, there is basically, at the highest realm, 7 soul families, of which everyone is part of one of those 7 that's in incarnation. And so the idea is, if you picture that soul family, there's probably a billion beings that are part of one soul family. All those billion beings are like rays of light shining out, trying to gain experiences. You gain experiences through feeling and perception. Perception is through the lens through which you work. Not just the lens you see, but you interpret things, or you hear things, or you speak things. That's your whole lens. And you can shift that lens as you gain more and more experiences. You see? So the experiences aren't you, you are that soul. You see? And that's important because like for, I'm trying to give a good example. How many of you ever heard of Alice Bailey or Joelle Cool? Okay, so she's written the very high level books, written on many, many levels. There's a group of disciples around the world. They're being united through trinities of meditations all over the world. Hundreds of thousands probably at this point, right? But as they were coming together into their inner ashrams, and she was giving insights of people in their community, she would look around and be like, oh yeah, I can understand why that person's in our group. What the hell's that person doing? That person's obnoxious, or that person's this, or that. You see, it's not about personalities. You gotta get beyond that. The personalities is what's distorting your lens of clarity of your true loving self. Please, please, please believe that exists inside of you. Do you see? Don't say, try not to say, what am I doing here tonight? Oh, this is for some of the people, this is way out of my league. Or just because I'm not getting it means the thinking mind separates. It's not about that. But you got to start giving yourself permission to step into that silence, which is the voice of your soul. Give yourself permission to not have to react to those emotions that are charged up inside of you or outside of you. Giving it a little time and space. Bringing in that loving lens. It's always there. It's always shining. You're never alone. Do you see what I'm saying? If you can believe it, then you can start to achieve it. But you got to start with that. Do you see? Don't be worried about where you find yourself. What state. If you're in one of the astral realms or you're in the mental body, it doesn't matter. It's just to get to the authenticness of yourself so you can start sharing that love. And where it naturally unfolds is where it's going to happen no matter what anyway. The only thing that you're dictating is the speed of that growth or not. And whether certain things happen or you just start a whole new cycle of human evolution. We won't get into any of that, but that's all it is. It doesn't matter. There is not a race. You can have a lot of purpose and still there is no need for you to do that purpose in this lifetime. Because there is a million other people out there that are having that same person. Don't worry about it. So you don't have to feel the pressure of it. Do you see? Try not to egoically take it on with some kind of pride. Watch for those things, build in the safeguards, and just choose. Choose if you want to have a life that's aligned with the true sense of who you are, or if you want to stay in the noise. Every time you go to pick up your cell phone or to play a video game, just consciously recognize, hey, that's the noise, and that's me saying, find what was the feeling right before you picked up that phone, or that candy bar, or that sexual act, or that whatever it is, the alcohol, it doesn't matter, basketball game. None of them are bad, and you can play in that and have fun and give yourself those moments. But recognize it, because it'll point to you and it'll show you where there's things that are feeling unstable and it doesn't have a voice and you'd rather stay with the known. You see, because it's scary to drop out there. But just recognize it and play with it and see. We all have it. Do you see? So where they talk about the astral realm being where you're making the choices and you have to balance the pair of opposites. The idea scientifically is you need polarity, like A and B or positive and negative on a battery, in order for there to be potential to do the work, the energy to do. You need both sides that stimulate you. They're trying to stimulate you into making a choice. The choice basically is, how am I going to react and then later act? Am I going to react with a loving acceptance, or am I going to react with a control? Do I want to control the energies so I hoard them, or do I want to build more towards a group energy? Do you see? It is not an understanding of the thinking mind. It is what is standing under, which is a loving soul. Do you see? So the question isn't which fact is right. It is essentially getting to a point where understanding that it is all part of divine will in a loving essence. Just like Shiva destroyer. It's easy to love the creator. It's a little bit harder to love the destroyer. It's easy to see the love in what Jesus did. It's a little harder to see what Judas did. Do you see? They're both founded in love, and they both have a purpose. Our energy center, everything has its own being. The center has its own being. The tree has its own being. This county has its own being, the state, right? Our country has a certain energetic center versus, for instance, the center in India. That India center was more tied to religious and spiritual, while we were tied to more the scientific. And now what they give to a lot of teachings, if you listen to a lot of old wisdom speakers, they're talking about, I was brought to America to unify the wisdom and the science. You see? Why are so many masters and other teachers being sent to America? It's not just that we are weak and we need teachings. We both teach each other. There's always learned teaching. Do you see? What for instance, India did was they taught devotion. But to all those people, it is outside of them. We are now breaking through because we're independents. So we have a little bit easier way to show people that you can find it on your own. Do you see? So they're always there. And what's seen sometimes as bad or war or colonialism or any of those kinds of things, they all have a purpose. And they're all pointing us in a certain direction. We have free will here, but outside of that, free will is a guiding hand that no matter what is pushing evolution forward. So you can either depolarize and not act, or you can polarize, and essentially in that polarization you're making a choice. And in that choice you are, whether we recognize it or not, moving more forward towards materialism, the love of form, or the opposite, the love of the formless, which is going more towards a group consciousness. Cool. Is everyone ready? The last meditation is going to be a guided meditation. It'll be more playful, light. It's kind of more playful, I guess. So feel free to follow along. You can drift away if you want. If you're going to fall asleep, enjoy your snooze. Okay. Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Talk tomorrow.
Talk.
God bless. Allow yourself to melt away. We're just going to go on a little travel. You can use your imagination. You can use your sensing. You can use your feelings. You can use your thoughts. You can use your visualization. Whatever way you want to play with it. You might see things a little bit differently than the way I guide it. That's perfect too. See how quickly you can drop into your meditative state. Whatever that means for you. See yourself, you're going to be sitting at the booth of a diner. As you're sitting at that diner, something calls you to move your way outside. So you go out into the public space. You notice there's a girl there that she seems a little bit mentally unstable, congregating with her friends. You overhear her talking about a cave in a nearby town of Panther Hollow, a cave with magical beings. Our friends seem to have heard this before and just ignore her. They assume it's just another tirade, and so they begin to slowly drift away to other distractions as she remains sitting there alone on the curb. Something seems to guide you over to her like a small gravitational wave. And before you can even think, the words come out of your mouth. I'd be interested in seeing that cave over in Panther Hollow. And with that, she jumps up in excitement and starts walking down the road. She turns briefly to look over her shoulder to give you a gesture to follow, and you oblige. You begin making your way down a gravel road with no other people in sight. Walking, surpassing one hill after the other. Eventually, at the top of one of the fields, you come to the crest of Panther Hollow. Making your way slowly off the main road, heading over towards a clump of trees as you follow her. From there, she points. You look up, halfway up the rock outcropping. There is an opening, which looks like a cave. You two slowly make your way up to the entrance of the cave. As soon as you cross through the threshold of the cave, you can instantly tell you've crossed into another dimension. The girl starts hooting and hollering, but you seem completely unfazed by her as the intense energy of the cave has your full attention. Suddenly, a line of birds flies into the cave and starts circling around you. With that, you drop to your knees and begin to pull out some of your sacred amulets and talisman that you brought with you. You place them on the sandy ground around you. Start to offer loving prayers for this cave and also for these beings you innately know have been here holding a presence for a very long time. Up until this point, you've thought that this was all just an adventure and a coincidence, one after the other. But you now realize that these beings have been calling you here since you awoke this morning. You also recognize that this group of beings forming a circle around you are much, much older than the earth itself. You look around to take in their sacred presence. They begin speaking to you in a ceremonial language of ancient tongue. You don't recognize any of their words, but after a while you start to telepathically understand what they're sharing. With their presence here, you recognize that for many millennia in the past, they have offered sacred ceremonies to help prepare Grandmother Earth as she transitions to the needs of humanity. Yet these beings share with you that they've moved back into the shadows many centuries before because a well-wisher came and offered a sacrifice that was committed here with life. And as that was taken, these beings were not able to fully return. So they ask you, they called you here forward, to do a clearing ceremony of this cave. To return this cave to the origin of its sacred beginnings. They ask you to send that sacred soul whose life was sacrificed back to the light. In your own way, you perform this ceremony. Paying attention not only to method, but most importantly, intention. And after a few moments, you notice and can feel the purity of the Sacred Mother returning. And with this, the cave begins to fill with a glittering of golden light. You turn to ask the beings their names, and they let you know they are before and beyond the creation of words. They then gesture for you to follow them a little deeper into the cave. If you so will it, get up and begin to follow them into the next room. And as you begin to move, you look down and notice that you are no longer walking because your feet are off the ground. You're actually levitating as you follow them. Levitating by the power and free will of your mind. They lead you through and behind a waterfall to a much larger open room. They ask you to sit in circle around the flame. And offer to share a few brief messages before they leave. They share. Your chosen amulets and talisman have served you well. And while you can continue to honor them and bring them forward, realize that you can sit them down and find all from within. You take a moment to reflect and appreciate the wisdom in their words. Next, they pose a question for you. Are you running towards life or away from death? Are you running towards life or away from death? The beings thank you and let you know it is now time to head back toward your personal life. You agree and begin to float back through the waterfall and back out to the main room at the main entrance. The ancient beings dissolve into the light, and with that the circling birds reappear. They then form a line and fly back out of the cave. And with that, the girl who led you here today falls out of her trance and gently sinks to the ground, the sandy ground, for a brief rest. And with this, as you look on, you appreciate her gifts of seeing into the other worlds. And also appreciate the trance she was in was not that of a crazy person, but an intelligent response created in order to protect her fragile mind. You reach down and pick her up. You can give her an embracing hug and a thanks for sharing this special insight today. With that, you both agree it's now time to make your way safely back to the diner and to all of the stirrings. When you get there, you give the girl a light smile, a nod, and you two go back to your own separate days. On a different day, in the future, you try going back to this special place. You know it's near, but somehow you are never able to find this sacred cave again. With that, you remember you were called there to perform the sacred ceremony for a special purpose, And with that great responsibility achieved, it is best to leave certain things in the secret caves from which they came. One more moment to reflect. And then as you're ready, begin to wiggle the toes, adjust the hips, blink the eyes, body relaxed, mind alert. Before we close out this evening, we'll open it up to all of you, but first we have a loving light gathered. Send that loving light wherever you want. It could be to your internal body for a healing. It could be out to the country, to the world. It could be to your family. Just send the loving light. It's limited. It's infinite. Send it to loved one and stranger alike, however you want. Allow it to expand, to vibrate, to come alive. Send it to your place of employment or unemployment. Send it to your car, send it to your neighbor, send it everywhere. Send it to your doubt, to your hesitation, to your fears, to your pains, to your struggles. Send it everywhere, unbiased. And then with the next breath, bring it back into your center, fully to your heart, being clear and purified, sealing your heart off, for only your altar shall exist there. And then open your eyes, please, again. We'll see if there's anything that you guys want to share, any insights, any feedback from the meditation, whatever. Going. Go.
I have an observation.
Cool.
There was, and I noticed this in the, not in the mantra, but in
First one.
the meaty part. Compared to how you normally speak, you normally go through a meditation, and there was a very distinct difference tonight in your speech and transmission, and it was, I kind of thought my mind was playing games on me during that time, and then when we went back to the meditation, I was like, there's Phil. So I can't put my finger on it, but there was definitely something different about your cadence, your quality, the way in which you transmitted. And I've heard you speed through things before, but this was different. This wasn't a speeding. It was a downloaded situation, and can't put my finger on it, but there was definitely a different cadence and quality to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Drive safely. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Next time, just bring a sleeping bag. You can sleep over. Anyone else? Feel free. Go ahead.
I really enjoyed this meditation and the detail and the allegory of the cave. I guess I'm just wondering if anyone's open to answer if they want, like, what running towards life versus running away from death would look like. That really resonated with me.
Yes, so try to meditate on more before you get other people's. You know what I mean? Because it's really important.
I mean, I guess the initial response that came to mind was, like you were talking about earlier, Phil, like aligning ourselves to our higher selves, living with meaning and purpose, running towards life, but running away from death. Is that just in fear? Is that, gorging ourselves on hedonistic stuff to escape, the inevitable? I mean, but also tying in what Millie said, I think it's, everything's subjective to an extent. So it's all just how we interpret it within our own personal experiences. But just wanted to hear what other people thought.
Go ahead. If anybody wants to share, feel free. Any feedback on that? I mean, sorry.
Something I'd like to say.
I,
I don't know if it's specifically on what you asked this, but when you spoke about the girl that had invited me to the cave, and that she was in a trance, that to protect her fragile mind, I related to that. I think, I don't speak for other people, but I know I often have to, I'm very grateful that I can recognize that I'm in a trance, a story, that is not who I am. And I'm very grateful to know that's not who I am. It requires that I allow myself to be very uncomfortable. And when the girl invited me to the cave, I tried to be a loving presence and to be of service. So of course I said yes. But then of course I was uncomfortable because we had to go through the hills, and I was like, what the hell? You also have to go through this shit. When you're trying to be of service, right? And that's how I feel a lot. I have to get over myself, right? And a lot of times I don't want to be there, and I'm resentful and I'm grudging and begrudging, right? But if I just keep going, I can find the true me, and sometimes I have clarity on how to respond to the situation. And I find the cave, I find the cave. And I do have a question, because I wanted to ask this during the last meditation. You talked about us finding our purpose, and then you also spoke of that to bring to every situation a loving presence. So isn't everybody's purpose to find that loving presence in every situation? That's the question.
in their own interpretations of what that means. Yeah, so the idea is, remember, if you were to have an equation of every lesson and every emotion and put them all on one side of the equation, on the opposite side of that equation basically would, for this realm, be love. And so it all adds up to that, and just from a lot of different perspectives and stuff like that, I would imagine.
So I'd like to reflect on what you said. So my initial response to the running towards or running away from was it was the third answer. It was, my brain just said, hold that space. Just hold the space. Kind of that center of doing both of those things. And, I don't know if that's, kind of where I am at the moment, of doing neither of those answers and just holding that space and waiting for whichever direction to go. But internally I said, hold the space. So maybe you need to just reflect on all of them.
So none of them are wrong or right. Mm-hmm. One is a little bit more connected to the form side of life, and one is connected to the other side of the form. If you really start giving of yourself, the important part is to hit your wall and to go a little bit further. That's all. For some of you, you might hit the wall a little bit harder, if you're a little hard-headed like me, and some of you might hit it at full speed because you really want to, right? But you don't have to. You get to choose. But the idea is, if you hit that and you go a little bit beyond, you say, what the hell am I doing this for? And you go 5 more minutes or whatever, remember, you're setting a higher watermark. Spirit is always only going to reflect back wherever you are. And so if you want something out there to change, you got to change it within. You can call and call and call, but they're only going to answer in response to your watermark. Do you see? And that's for your own protection. Because there's a lot of people that say they really want it, and then you get it, and then you're really up shit's creek. Do you know what I mean? So that's the important part of it. So you know I rarely have ever done one like that, but the second meditation was not a made-up meditation. That's based on real experiences of people. Most of it. I'd say 80% of it. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight, for helping this to come to fruition. Hope you all have a great week, and we see you again soon. Enjoy. Take care. God bless. That's all, folks. Thank you.